without further ado, we're going to kind of go in a thematic order, really starting at the global level and then working our way down to the local, and then we'll kick off questions from there. We'll probably do a few minutes of questions just amongst ourselves, and then we'll open it up to the group. So we're going to kick off with Amanda.
So thank you all for having me today. My name is Amanda Eichel, and I'm the Director of Program Delivery for an organization called C40 that recently joined forces with the Clinton Climate Initiative. And I want to talk to you today about how we're working with cities around the world. You got it? Okay. So the C40 is a network of 40 what we call participating megacities and then another 18 affiliate cities. The difference between these two types of cities are the 40 megacities are leading cities with populations in the millions. Our affiliate cities tend to be smaller cities who have something more advanced to share with the others. There is a professional staff located in 15 countries around the world. We also have 3 offices at this point in LA, in New York, and in London, and hopefully one soon in Asia. And the chair right now is Mayor Michael Bloomberg of New York City. So why are we focused on cities? So cities right now account for over half of the world's population. And by 2050, this will be 3/4 of the population will be living in cities. At the same time, we consume over 2/3 of the world's goods and account for 70% of greenhouse gas emissions. The cities who are involved in the C40 alone account for 12% of the world's GDP. 21% of the world's GDP, 12% of greenhouse gas emissions, and 8% of global population. So even with these 40 cities that we're working with, there's a significant amount of impact that we can have. At the same time, mayors have the opportunity to influence a number of different sectors with the greatest impact on greenhouse gas emissions. So both land use in terms of transportation and density policy changes, waste management, energy consumption, and water supply and wastewater management. So we did a study of all the cities who are part of the C40 and tried to understand what mayors could actually influence. Significant power to implement change that will result in reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. So our history is the C40. The C40 was founded in October 2005 by then Mayor Ken Livingstone of London. Started out as 20 cities. Over time, established a partnership with the Clinton Climate Initiative. That was in 2006. So that C40, which was a convener of cities, could work with CCI on the ground to implement programs and policies. In 2007, at the C40 Summit in New York City, there was established governance and membership standards. And then in 2011, just April of this year, we reintegrated these two organizations to make the best use of the resources and strengths of both. So what that means about what we do. We are a series of networks bringing cities together that have similar opportunities to do work on the ground. We put together conferences. There's a summit every 2 years with mayors of C40 cities, and in between workshops that bring together the technical experts in cities who are actually doing the work on the ground. We bring together the C40 voice to advocate for international climate policy with an emphasis on the impact of cities and the work that we're doing. We build program teams to deliver direct assistance to cities and in 5 different program areas at this point in time. So there's building energy efficiency, waste management, outdoor lighting, climate positive development, which is basically a carbon neutral approach to new development, and then transportation. And then we are developing and building a research arm to really understand both the impact of cities and the way that we can move forward. So some examples of these various initiatives. Networks. Connecting Delta Cities is a group of 8 cities that came together out of a workshop that happened in Tokyo in 2008 on adaptation. These 8 cities talking to each other during the conference recognized that they all wanted to do work on adaptation as it related to the deltas in their areas. So they've come together to convene regularly and to work with key partners, including consultants, university partners, and build on the expertise within each of their cities to develop common solutions to climate adaptation related to deltas, and then also to talk regularly about the barriers they're facing and just basically serve as a group therapy. An example of a conference or workshop that the C40 puts on. So this was a summit held in Seoul in 2009. I'm getting ahead of myself. We had, at the outcomes of this summit, we had Ho Chi Minh City join as a new city. It's part of the C40, which was exciting. 14 mayors participated. The city of Seoul used this as a platform to really elevate their work and to deliver a new climate action plan. And then finally, 80 cities participated from throughout the world. Advocacy. So in 2009 in Copenhagen, the C40 partnered with the city of Copenhagen as well as Eichel, Local Governments for Sustainability, to put on a climate summit for mayors, which was seen as an opportunity to showcase the work that was really happening in cities on the ground and really helped to influence the conversation at the Convention of Parties meeting in Copenhagen that year. So much so that the following year in Cancun, we really saw more of an emphasis on the importance and the role of cities going forward. And direct support. So this is an example of the building retrofit work that's happening on the ground in Houston, Texas, with support from the city director, who is on the ground there, embedded in the city government, as well as the buildings team, the technical support. The city of Houston has initiated a program to retrofit 271 city buildings. It's one that will now be replicated by the school system there, so significant impact on the ground and with support from both city staff and technical staff within C40 and CCI. So another example of direct support is the waste management work that's happening in Lagos, Nigeria. Waste management was the #1 priority for the city of Lagos, but they had really no idea about how to proceed. So our international waste experts came in and worked with the city to develop an integrated waste management plan, which includes a facility that will begin construction in 2011 and really be one of a sort of a unique facility in its region and serve as an example for many of the cities throughout the North African region. Research. So we launched the Climate Action in Megacities report in our most recent summit in Sao Paulo this past May. This report catalogs the work that's happening in C40 cities. So it sets a policy benchmark. So understanding exactly what is happening on the ground in the areas of transportation, waste, energy efficiency across the network of C40 cities. And what we found was that over 4,700 policies are already in place. But what we also found is that there's significant opportunity within C40 cities to do significantly more work. So the other piece is really trying to catalog or inventory the opportunity that we're finding in cities. And based on that, try to bring together and to refocus the C40's efforts and program support around the areas that have the most impact or where mayors have the most potential to do work. So that will really drive how we're allocating resources, developing program support into the future. It is also a way of showing progress over time and helping cities to understand why it's important to be part of the C40 network. So where we are going, I mentioned that in April of this year we brought together C40 and CCI as a more formal integration. And one of the things that we're doing right now is to assess the resources that we have with both organizations on the ground. So that includes both the staff resources with CCI, the invaluable expertise that is housed within the network of C40 cities, and then the work that's already been done that can be shared across the cities. Where we think we are going is to refocus our programs and services based on the areas of greatest opportunity in cities. So that relates back to that research effort I mentioned earlier. Using that research and data over time to establish a formal and ongoing baseline of both powers and policies, but also greenhouse gas emissions. This means establishing a standard for how we measure emissions across cities. Right now, cities measure their greenhouse gas emissions and their adaptation risk in many different ways. There's no consistent approach or protocol to measuring a community's emissions. So one of the first things we'll be doing is establishing that standard and then encouraging our C40 members to continue to report over time. And we're doing partly that through a partnership with the Carbon Disclosure Project, where cities are encouraged to report that information publicly, as well as measure it internally. I mentioned the partnership with the Carbon Disclosure Project. A partnership with Eichel is actually helping us to establish that international standard on greenhouse gas emissions reporting. We also announced a new partnership with the World Bank during the C40 Summit in Sao Paulo in May. This partnership will allow us to work with the World Bank to not necessarily make new resources available, but to make the resources that they currently allocate to nations or subnational governments directly to cities, which will be a significant change. We'll also be working with them to standardize how they're thinking about the impact that those projects have. So there will be a standard way for cities to know how to access those funds. Finally, we're working with the City of Rio and the UN to establish a voice for C40 and for cities at the Rio +20 conference coming up next year. And we also have plans to expand. So right now the C40 represents many of the world's megacities, but we recognize that over time it will not continue to represent the largest cities in the world based on GDP or population unless we start to think about expanding into China and India and other places where populations and city centers are growing significantly. And that's it.
Great, thanks, Amanda. So I think that was, incredibly helpful to set the global context of why we're even talking about cities in the first place. As we all know, the discussion has really remained, federal, state, and this is really showing that cities have been the ones moving forward. Now we have Teresa Sanchez from the Mayor's Office in Los Angeles, and she's going to talk through how some of this is actually playing out real time on the ground here.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for inviting me. Yes, so from the global to the very, very local, the real grassroots. And what I wanted to present briefly today is, I'm, by the way, directing the City of Los Angeles Green Building Retrofit and Workforce Program. This is a new program, well, relatively new. It actually came out of a 6-year grassroots public policy organizing campaign that brought together environmental organizations, workforce development advocates, labor unions, and other activists. Around 25 organizations in the city of Los Angeles convened by the Los Angeles Apollo Alliance. And the goal was to convince the city of Los Angeles that as the largest property owner in the city, we have over 1,000 buildings that are owned by the city of Los Angeles, that we have severe problems with unemployment, underemployment, severe problems with the environment, and we thought that, we did a lot of research and decided that retrofitting city buildings to improve environmental efficiency, water conservation, and reaching a number of other green elements would be an excellent way to activate already existing city assets to create a workforce and economic development strategy for the city of Los Angeles. We started back in 2006. We worked with the mayor, Mayor Villaraigosa. Also, this aligns perfectly with his climate change action plan to reduce carbon emissions, to improve energy efficiency, to reduce the amount of fossil fuels that the city relies on to generate energy, and a number of other goals. We worked with the city council. Councilmember Herb Wesson really led the charge, authored the ordinance. And the ordinance, we believe, is first in the nation municipal, very large-scale green municipal retrofit ordinance that also really focuses on workforce and economic development. So back in 2009, that ordinance was passed by the city council, and about a year later, the mayor's office began to put the pieces in place to implement the ordinance. And so all of this came together just around the time that the market was imploding, But fortunately, the Obama administration was just coming into office and was putting forward the stimulus, the $787 billion stimulus package, which included significant amount for investment in energy, green energy retrofit, some green jobs training grants. Some of it was what we call formula dollars that comes to the city based on things like population size, poverty rates, unemployment rates, et cetera. Some of it is competitive. We also were able to access some of the Workforce Investment Act funds that were also increased under the stimulus program. And what we've put in place is a program that we believe can potentially reach all of the city's buildings, over 1,000 buildings. We got a part of the energy efficiency block grant, about $14 million. We're using that to leverage another up to $39 million in the qualified energy conservation bond grants. We've hired a financial consultant that's going to be advising us on some other private sector funding operations, and we're in the process of moving forward. We've completed 15 buildings over this summer, spring and summer, and we're moving forward next fiscal year with the next 52 buildings. The folks that are doing this work, again, when we originally conceived it, we had very ambitious ideas about doing a green building training program. Because of the crisis, the budget in the city was facing layoffs last year. So what we were able to do was to prevent 40 individuals who would have been laid off from losing their jobs last summer and put them into a green building kind of pre-apprenticeship, if you will, training program. And right now, I'm in the process of working with our LA and Orange County Building Trades Council to put together a civil service apprenticeship program that will be able to take these folks to the next level in terms of learning how to do electrical work, plumbing, and other elements of green construction and maintenance. So that's how we got started. And those folks are now working on those projects. We think it's really kind of a good, we hope, demonstration project for other cities and counties and other places to hopefully kind of take the lead, because we think that the government can play a really important role in stimulating green construction, green building. The city does have a green construction ordinance on new construction, but we think that really taking this kind of leadership as a government entity, using its own property, and again, to activate those kind of standing assets as an economic development tool. So the program, again, we're going to generate verifiable savings. We're going to be able to measure and verify the amount of savings that we're generating through these green building upgrades, which I prefer the word upgrade to retrofit, actually. We might want to rethink the title of the program. But to capture, measure, verify the savings and be able to put those savings into reinvestment in more projects and more savings. And the way we're going to do that is by establishing a special revenue fund within the city budget. And that's, again, something that's never been done before in our city. And it's not that easy to do. But we're creating a consensus among the policymakers that it's something that's reasonable to do. And it's something that they're going to, we've already gotten them to take leadership on that. And again, this is a partnership between the city and the city unions and community-based organizations, and we think that's also an important model that we hope other people can learn from and replicate in other places. And again, we hope that the city's program will also be a model for our commercial sector, our residential sector, that we can create models and learn lessons and hopefully lead the way in terms of some of the technologies and the financing mechanisms that also can be beneficial to the private sector and other cities around the country. So with that, I thank you.
Thanks, Julie.
Yeah, so that was great. I mean, I think we're learning a lot now about how, at the local level, at the city level, funds are being leveraged, and how do, in these tough economic times where cities are facing layoffs and furloughs and, a cutback of not just non-essential services, but essential services, really, how are cities really thinking about what type of strategic partnerships they can have to move forward? So now we're going to go a step further into the local. We're going to touch on the Crystal City BID, Business Improvement District, and I think that will be a great way to look at how, even a step down, how communities are working together in a strategic sense to continue to move environmental policies and programs forward. This is Angela.
So I'm Angie Fox, and I just flew in from DC last night. DC, we had an earthquake last week. I weathered the hurricane in Long Island this weekend, so I'm happily here avoiding natural disasters. Though I flew in last night, I am flying back tonight, so it's a quick trip. A couple things. So I run the Crystal City Business Improvement District. My job is basically to give Crystal City a soul, to change the way people see, perceive, and experience the area. If you have flown into National Airport, you've been there. But I like to give a few visuals of just where we are. We're right by the Pentagon. We are walking distance. We actually have Bikeshare, biking distance easy from the district. I water ski all summer long right there on the Potomac. But we are the neighborhood that we're in Arlington County, actually, so we're actually across the river from the district, but we are Arlington's largest downtown. When I started this role in November of 2006, Crystal City was, Concrete Canyon. Why would you go there without an appointment? Crystal City, where you can get in but you can't get out. All of those kinds of lovely descriptors. But I'm a recovering electrical engineer from Georgia Tech. If you know what that means I was the girl in school. So, it's like, people talk about their MRS degree and things like that. I'm like, yeah, it's like, Georgia Tech 40-1 plus or something like that, depending on where you are, where the odds are good, but the goods are odd. So, it's true. So I kind of think Crystal City is the same. It's a place with great location, great access. It's an original transit-oriented development neighborhood. It's clean, it's safe, but it had no soul. And so our standpoint is, odd goods, but things that we can definitely fix. So we've done that by turning it into a community that people want to be in. All right, hold on, let me make sure I've got my... Okay. So we basically say people want to be in a place that is active, artful, accessible, and green. So we started on the active program in terms of the view of the neighborhood. We do things like every Monday morning we have this lovely water park. It's a fountain, not a water slide, where we do free yoga. 7 a.m. We do Zumba in the parks on Wednesday. We have a 5K every Friday in April. We also, at Friday night, 6:30 p.m., we say you can come, you get your exercise over with, and then actually can party the rest of the weekend. And if you're running a Saturday morning 5K where you have to behave on Friday night. So we get thousands of people that come out every week for those events. We do bike races. We think part of being a green community too is also getting people outside and doing fun things. So Crystal City is an active place. All right, somebody help me with this. Okay. It is also an artful place. We've done things like take former movie theaters, they were then conference centers for hotels, and turn them into permanent theaters for arts groups. I was saying we did an eco-art project where we did a call for artists to say we want you to design sculptures that are completely biodegradable. We had several, like 30 submissions. We rolled that out. We actually won a design award of excellence from Arlington County for doing that. We've turned, we said, Crystal City's not considered a hotbed of fashion, so we have this, what we call a fortnight of fabulous fashion, fun, and ridiculousness in February, where you can actually come and buy something off of a runway, but another fun way to sort of rethink the community. And we've taken all that concrete and turned that into canvas as part of our Art Walls program with local artists. We also say Crystal City is accessible. We are the first community in Virginia, in Arlington, and part of DC that rolled out a Bikeshare program. This is Capital Bikeshare. Basically, DC had done a Bikeshare program. They called it Smart Bike. We called it Stupid Bike, largely because it wasn't solar operated. You couldn't move the pieces around it. It wasn't regional. So when DC went back out to do another program in Arlington, we said we want to be part of it, and we'll actually put funds in so that we can be a big rollout location. And it's been so successful, they're now doubling the size of the program in the Washington area. Also, we have free Wi-Fi in all of our courtyards, again, getting people outside, and then taking advantage, of course, of the fact that we've got planes, trains, and automobiles. We've got the metro station right there, 2 of them. We have obviously Bikeshare, we have the airport, we have VRE, which is a Virginia Rail Express. Basically every aspect of transit evolves right there or lands right in Crystal City, so how do you take advantage of that? And then, of course, green, and not just greenwashing. You know, as a bid, we don't build buildings, but we do really design sort of how a community operates as a community. So we rolled out things like street recycling. We do an electronics recycle program where we recycle more than 90 tons of electronics in the last year and a half. We do a farmers market, producer only, a community-supported agriculture program. I know there's one more in here. Okay, there, whoops. Sorry, guys. Electrical engineer can't operate PowerPoint. There we go. So Farmers Market Power Purge, we've done some fun things with plants. We have these things called Floral Frenzy. One of our property owners, every year they recycle their tropical plants that are outside. So basically we make it a free-for-all. People can grab them and take them home rather than trashing them. Same thing with a geranium grab. You know, every year they want to do a replanting because they want the blooms. And so we basically open it up and people get trowels and bags. They can come and grab them. But just fun ways to get people excited and involved. And then, of course, we also do, you know, Arlington is looking to be part of a district energy program, of which Crystal City would be the first part of that. Our hotels are part of green programs. So anything that we can do at the baseline level that allows people to very easily recycle or participate in programs. You know, we do a lot of events, like we have a big wine festival. Everything, every cup, fork, plate, napkin is compostable. We do community compost. Everything that feels like our events are low to no waste. Just other things that we can do to just drive that message forward about how easy it is just as an individual and then as a community to participate, while at the same time there's a recently approved 60-year plan for Crystal City that'll change density by more than 60%, and those buildings again being green, and that's like the longer term program and things that we can be involved in. So that's Crystal City and that's us.
That's great.
I think we can all say that's really exciting and kind of can't wait to visit. Sounds amazing. So the next speaker we have is Gillian Wright, and Gillian's with Southern California Gas. And I think this is a really interesting example to look at how the private sector comes back and works with communities and cities to actually implement policies and programs and projects on the ground. So I'll let you take it from here.
I'm getting green city envy. I don't know about you. I was actually in Portland a few weeks ago, and I found myself a little bitter walking around. It's easy, blocks are small, it's not hot. Anyway. But I think it's always something to aspire to. So it's such a pleasure to be here again. I had the pleasure of speaking at the first Women in Green conference, and when the offer came again, I immediately leaped at it because I'm so inspired and I learned so much at these events. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our work with local governments. And I was sort of wondering, as Sarah was saying, we're going to go more and more narrow. And I thought, well, now I'm wondering how we get smaller than a neighborhood of DC. But Southern California Gas Company actually covers Southern California from Visalia east to the Arizona border and south to San Diego. So our geographic spread is very large. But our focus is, of course, narrow because we are a gas company. And so what I want to do first is set the stage a little bit on how does natural gas, how is that really central to a sustainability discussion? And I am terrible with these, but I'm determined. It's going to work this time, I know it. Good, okay. So fundamentally, sustainability is really about practicality, as the way I think about it. Because what you want in a state of sustainability is something that is sustainable. It stays, it retains. And so that means you need to consider a lot of issues. You've got to consider economics, you've got to consider air quality, you've got to consider safety, reliability, energy independence, competitiveness, and really the probability of success. What are the things that are really going to work? And for that, I think no one solution is really going to address all of the needs of all of the people. And we really have to acknowledge that we're looking at a portfolio of options that are going to work interdependently to achieve both efficiency and sustainability. Our portfolio is going to include traditional energy sources such as electricity and a combination of viable alternatives like solar and wind. But now I want to tell you about what does natural gas do in that mix. So natural gas is the unsung hero in this mix. Gas is a fuel that heats our homes, heats our water, cooks our food, and has lower emissions and lower costs than almost any other most other energy sources. It's clean burning, it's reliable, it's flexible, it's storable, and natural gas in the form of biogas is actually a renewable fuel. It's a renewable resource, but it's interchangeable with natural gas and can be used in the same appliances mixed in with natural gas. We've also learned that a lot of people are really not aware of how much of our energy use actually comes from natural gas. California, natural gas is the primary fuel source for heating homes. Over 90% of homes in Southern California use natural gas for space heating and water heating. In California, natural gas is also the primary source for electricity. Over 50% of the electricity consumed in California comes from natural gas. The other thing that is important to understand with gas is gas makes it possible for renewable sources of electricity to really deliver their potential. We kind of like to say that natural gas puts the able in renewable. And the key thing that natural gas does is that electricity has to match supply with demand instantaneously. And what natural gas does is that gas-fired plants can ramp up and down to match exactly the power as it's coming out of solar and wind plants. And what that means is you can get the maximum amount of electricity that can be produced from the solar and wind plants without affecting the reliability of the electricity use. And then when we get into really what the practicality is about, it's cheap, that matters. When resources are constrained, you really have to look at what is the cost. And in a sustainability audience, I'm always conscious of and thinking about, you need to think about the entire cost. It's not appropriate to think about just the cost at the pump, or at the burner tip. You have to think about what is my cost in terms of emissions, what is my cost in terms of pollution. But when you think about the entire cost, this is still an efficient and affordable resource. And one of the statistics that helps to make it clear for me is to think about with electricity, as electricity comes through power lines, the loss both in the conversion to electricity and the loss in the delivery over the power lines means that somewhere around 26 to 38% of the power is actually usable at the point of delivery. With natural gas, 92% is delivered in usable form. So there's very little loss from production to delivery. And that means you can really get more out of a lower cost resource. But that's not good enough. We want efficiency. SoCalGas has spent over 30 years in promoting energy efficiency with our customers. And we build on the inherent efficiency of natural gas, but we partner with customers to achieve even greater efficiencies. We work directly with city, county, and state governments now. We have 14 partnerships with city and county governments all over our territory, covering all the way from Visalia to South Orange County. We also have state partnerships with universities and community colleges, and also with the state of California and the Department of Corrections. What our partnerships do is go beyond just we've had forms of energy efficiency programs, as I say, for 20, 30 years. And the general form of those is we do a lot of education, we do a lot of outreach, and then we offer rebates and incentives to help bring down the cost of more efficient equipment for our customers. What our partnerships do is add another layer to that, and where we really try to work with local governments to help push and accelerate the pace of change, both for the governments themselves and for the citizens in their regions. So first, we help governments to actually manage the retrofits of their own buildings, much like what my colleague was saying about the city of Los Angeles. We do that with a number of other cities, and we might do that by actually funding staff to help within the city to manage retrofit projects. We also provide technical support, and we provide training on green building and retrofit techniques, as well as incentives and rebates for the equipment itself. Another big area that we do is community outreach. So we work with communities to do education. We place our resources in City Hall. We participate in community events. A number of communities now are trying to package together all of the resources that are available: water, electricity, gas. We work with cities to help put together those packages to make it seamless and easy for residents to participate in all of the programs that are available to them. And then another big thing we've been doing is strategic planning support, really helping cities that are trying to do the kind of climate action plans, strategic plans around energy efficiency, around sustainable development. We give them support in building the greenhouse gas inventories. We give them support in coming up with technologies. We help them demonstrate advanced technologies. We actually have a research and development department that will place advanced technologies in key cities so that you can actually both experiment with, demonstrate, and publicize new technologies. And then another critical component is financing. It's related to our local government program. We offer currently on-bill financing. This is a zero-interest program which for local governments will loan up to $250,000 at zero interest. And it's for anything that has a payback of 10 years or less. So anything that can pay for itself through your energy bill, we will finance at no cost. One of the new things that we're about to roll out, one of the problems that we ran into, and it's a good problem to have, but one of the problems we run into is natural gas just isn't that expensive. So it's hard to find the value in savings that you really need. And one thing that came up, we have a minimum loan size of $5,000. Well, a lot of local governments have buildings with smaller individual equipment, and they weren't able to get up to that minimum loan size. So what we're now going to be rolling out is allowing governments to aggregate all of their buildings to get up to that $5,000 level, so that we can finance more equipment. And we're going to start that with local governments. We're also looking at offering it for things like chain stores. Similarly, we've got a lot of small facilities. If we can group them together, then we can do more. So, what has this accomplished so far? Not teaching me how to operate a clicker. Okay. So what this means, energy efficiency is really a success story for natural gas, and it's one that we're very proud of. And what you can see here is our actual total carbon emissions for the natural gas sector in California are already below the 1990 level. That's actually the goal in AB 32 for 2020, but we're already below that level. And our projection is that we will be even further below that level by 2020. Now, what's important to understand in this is that is not us losing our market. That is us keeping the market that we have and seeing continuous improvement year over year in the efficiency of the use of natural gas. Electricity is a good story. It's flat. Our story's better. It's declining. And one last thing, I just want to put in a little plug on renewable natural gas because this does link so tightly with cities. And you can see where it comes from. The other image is not as cute, so we try to go with the cows, although for most of our territory, honestly, it's people that are the source of the fuel. Cities control a huge potential in renewable energy that's really underdeveloped right now, and that's in the form of sewage treatment and in solid waste. And one of the things that we've been focusing on is trying to make that easier to develop. And we actually have proposed a small-scale biomethane production program in our rate case, where we hope to take some small to medium-sized wastewater treatment plants, which is the typical size for most of the cities in our region, and be able to produce pipeline quality biomethane. Because right now, those smaller plants, what they do, that's a byproduct of waste treatment, but that gas gets flared. They just burn it in a flare. They don't use it for anything. But it's the same as natural gas. It can be cleaned, it can be used, and it's interchangeable, except it's a zero carbon resource. So that's an area that we've been really trying to promote and develop. So, and I am going to skip this one. That's not, wasn't even supposed to be in there. Natural gas transportation, also a good thing, but I only have so much time. So, a combination of resources is really what's going to get us to what we need. What I want to take my last moment is, I hope I've sold you on the value of energy efficiency for natural gas. Unfortunately, in this year's budget, $155 million of funding for gas energy efficiency was diverted to the general fund. We are in the process of adapting and trying to continue our programs. PG&E and SDG&E have had to suspend gas energy efficiency as a result of this. Where we're at right now, we're at the very end of the legislative session, and the bill that this was originally going to be in died in committee, but there is still an effort to get this language to ensure that gas energy efficiency funds are used for energy efficiency, and to have that added into the governor's bill to advance electric energy efficiency. So I'm asking for your support. And I lost my last slide. So we have support letter template and contact list if you'd like to express your support for protecting this funding, and this will also be posted on the Three Scores website. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, we've got about 5 minutes. So I would like to ask one quick question, because it's a theme I saw throughout everyone's, except for the Crystal City bid, so I'm super interested to hear kind of how it plays out for everyone. But I think one thing that we've all noticed, right, is that with times fiscally as tight as they are, it's interesting to me that even you guys are saying budgets are being slashed. Everyone's facing these strong fiscal constraints right now. And so I guess the question is, how do we continue to maximize resources? I mean, I think some of the conversations that took place in the earlier panel were saying it's all about making the financial case for something, improving the financial viability. And I think that's true to an extent, obviously, but I think that there's also moments in which cities and local entities are saying, no, we see the financial value, we still don't have enough money to do it. I think that's a bit of where policy comes in to say, well, this is a non-monetary way in which we can support. But I'm interested in how everyone kind of sees their next few years playing out in this space, because I think it's something that public sector, private sector, globally, locally, I think we've kind of highlighted as an issue across the board. So I'm interested if anyone kind of has really been embedding that within their specific strategy, or if it's something that we're kind of playing with each budget cycle and figuring our way out as we move through it. But I'm specifically interested in that.
In trying to convince the policymakers that we need to make this investment now, or we will pay more next year and the year after and the year after. We know electricity rates with Department of Water and Power are going up. And so if we don't make these investments now, we will be paying more for energy later. So it only makes sense to be able to leverage the resources that we've been able to get through the stimulus money and begin to actually then capture the savings to then reinvest in future efficiencies.
Well, I'll say, I think it comes up a lot, and we focus both on just the overall affordability and then trying to find creative ways, and we spend a lot of time creatively stretching resources also, trying to find creative ways such as the financing mechanisms that we offer, lending our own staff, helping to fund staff, trying to find things that will really make resources reach farther.
I think part of the value of an organization like C40 is that we really can find areas of commonality across cities and try and aggregate the resources that we're providing to support those, but also if you find 5 cities who are all willing to take a really bold policy step, which may not cost a lot of money to implement, they may be able to provide each other with some political cover and move forward with something that would be really challenging on their own. So I think we're trying to look at both opportunities to really move forward.
Am I on? There we go. From a pure Crystal City bid, a business improvement district standpoint, I mean, our green programs are inherent in everything we do, and they cross all of the different levels. And we're funded by a tax. So we're funded by a tax that the property owners, basically they are the ones that founded us, so they agreed to pay this tax. And at this point, we were just renewed ad infinitum, so there's no real end, or we had a sunset clause that was just removed, so we continue to move forward. And the property owners are very, very supportive of everything that we do. I think the bigger risk potentially comes in with their programs. As they're, like one of our biggest owners, property owners, is basically a New York company. So how does that continue to have the focus sort of in our community from that standpoint? But then Arlington County comes in, is that we sort of straddle the fence between being a public and private partnership. And there, I mean, they have a whole series of rules around what happens with new buildings and what can be built and what can't be built and how they are. Buildings need to be district energy ready. So there's an element of where the government at that point is sort of keeping the accountability. But the other, the good news is the property owners also see value, and they're testing things like daytime cleaning, versus, because we're talking about office buildings, right, versus cleaning at night, which is the way it's always been, right? So just a very different kind of focus that now has really become ingrained in what we do. Though, certainly Washington has not been hit community-wise and economy-wise as most of the other areas in the country have, at least not yet.
I'd love to take at least one from the audience. I know we're running slim on time, but if we could get one, if there's anyone that's itching to say something, ask a question. Great.
Hi, Christina Cull from North Carolina Corporation. How are your policies and programs helping the manufacturing and businesses in each of your cities and areas go green as well?
I'll talk. The assistance for manufacturing businesses is a huge part of our programs. And what we do with our programs is we focus on both providing incentives, providing design support. We actually have a program that we call Savings by Design that will help where we have architects and engineers that will work with manufacturing architects and engineers to redesign and improve the energy efficiency of a plant expansion or a new plant. And we have some examples. There's Enertech is a facility out in Rialto that was newly built in 2007, I believe. But with the help of our program, they reduced the energy profile of that facility by 50%. So there's real opportunities, and one of the things that we've found, or that I've found in working with manufacturers that has been a real barrier, is that a lot of times the focus tends to be on production. Anything that affects production, that's going to affect production and quality, that's a real focus. Energy is viewed as sort of a sunk cost. And so one of our big focuses is to try to shift that thinking, to think about energy as an input cost, and also to increase the trust and confidence. There's a real reluctance to do anything that has any kind of a threat to a production line. And so one of the things we've been very focused on is trying to demonstrate and put out examples to show that efficiency improvements won't impact production, won't impact reliability.
I forgot to explain before what I do, but I'm our city director for C40CCI here in LA, and I am based full-time out of the mayor's office. And I know one of the things that they've done in the mayor's office is implemented a local bid preference. So companies that are based inside the city of Los Angeles have an 8% bid preference on all city contracts. And it's something that is a great incentive program to try and support local businesses and encourage businesses to relocate here. And I think it's something that is new, it's just started. I think they see a lot of potential in saying, this is something that 8% isn't going to make or break a contract for us, and we'd rather give it locally. So it's one technique. All right, well, thank you guys so much for your time today. This was really exciting, and thank you for taking the time.